everyone, welcome back to the channel again. Today we're back on GT Sport and we're back with the FIA Manufacturers Championship round number 5 at Tokyo Expressway, driving the Group 3 cars. So this lobby was a reasonably high split lobby. There was quite a few big drivers in there, and we're riding on board now with my fastest lap in qualifying. This was the end of my first lap. It wasn't particularly great. I opted for a different strategy to everyone else. I opted to go really slow on the out lap, get rid of some fuel, and then just do 3 laps of runs in clean air with no one around me and not worry about slipstream, not trying to get any form of slipstream and not pitting for fresh tyres, because I took it that slow on my out lap. There was no need to pit for fresh tyres, so it's a little bit of wear out of them, but nothing major. You can see a lot of people are already putting their laps in by now, and obviously I put the laps in before I did the first lap, and I'm just staying out. This lap was going to be the best opportunity of getting a good lap in. A new lap one, I'd have to just put a safe lap in, just put a bank lap in, and then this lap had to be a fairly good lap. Obviously no slipstream to work with, so it all had to be done through just hitting your lines, and that was the best way I felt like I could get a reasonably okay qualifying session in. Obviously if I could have got a bit of luck on one lap with, you know, getting a slipstream down the straight, gaining me half a second, it would have been a massive help to improve my time, but it wasn't to be. I had to do all my run in clean air, which you can see is going reasonably okay. All the times coming in was quite distracting as I was on the lap. You can just hear the pinging all the time, and the urge to look on that left hand side to see the times that are coming up was quite strong. I'm not sure if you can change that sound because it was distracting me as I was driving, but managed to keep the concentration and was actually on a really good lap at this stage. This was quite a clean lap, everything was going well, and hooking the corners up reasonably well. It wasn't perfect, but it was a good lap for actual qualifying practice. You know, I don't think I could have asked for much more out of this Mercedes AMG than what I did on this lap. Obviously it would have been nice to get a slipstream at the start of your lap going down the straight, and then another one on the end of your lap, but you know, it's down. That would have been down to luck, a lot of that, and that's why you see a lot of different times in qualifying. I've seen different splits, some people getting like 59.1s and 58.9s, but a lot of that is purely because of just picking up someone's slipstream and gaining big advantages. It was a lot of luck involved with that. So I go over the line with no slipstream on a 2 minutes flat, basically 0.1, so I was really happy with that, and that was good enough to start me P5. This was the end of the qualifying session as I was on my final lap. I tried to push a little bit too hard on this lap, made a little error, but it was still a reasonably okay lap. You can see going over the line, managed to pretty much match my lap 2, only a 10th behind, so 2 reasonably okay laps together. The plan worked well, obviously no traffic to ruin any of your laps, so it was a more consistent approach. It was a little bit risky that you wouldn't get a slipstream, but I felt like the slipstream way of doing it was probably the biggest risk, because you end up with people fighting each other and getting in each other's way, trying to pick up the slipstreams, battling away, and you can lose as much as you can gain. I mean, there is a big chance you can gain a lot of time if it all goes well, but I just went for the safer route, and it worked out for me, picking up a P5 in qualifying in a car that's not particularly strong here. The AMG Mercedes was not a great car at this track. It's not a powerful car, so couldn't complain at P5, starting the AC. Really happy with that. And going through the grid, you can see a lot of big names in this lobby. I think P7 was Zocchi. I think I did expect him to get a bit of a fast lap, but I don't think he managed to get a clean lap in, to be brutally honest, because that Dodge Viper with Zocchi on was definitely a faster car than what P7 shows there. As going down the back of the grid, you see a very fast lobby. I think a lot of these drivers were battling a lot with each other to get the slipstream, as you see GTA Ticheney there starting from P10 in the Peugeot, another car that really wasn't suited to this track. And there was a lot of powerful cars in this lobby, you can see. I was quite surprised I was that far up, because a lot of the cars in the lobby are Corvettes, Nissans, Dodge Vipers. You've got the Ferrari M. Thomas starting from pole in the Ferrari. Obviously that car is very fast down the straights, but it's also one of the best handling cars, although the tyres do go. But one thing that's good about this track is it doesn't really take too much wear on your tyres. I mean, I could do 6-7 laps on the Mercedes and it would start getting a little bit of wear on the fronts, but it wasn't anything massive. You could still keep reasonable lap times up, so that's why the Ferrari was fairly strong at this track. And I did expect that when I seen M. Thomas in the lobby. I thought that Ferrari would do very well in. Also, one thing I remembered with the Ferrari was when you short shift that Ferrari, the fuel is very good on that, and it maintained really good speed down the straights. I remember doing it at Nürburgring and noticing what a huge advantage there was in short shifting that Ferrari and getting fuel. So I knew the Ferrari would be a very hard car to beat here, But starting from P5, it was just about getting the consistent laps there in and getting a consistent result. You know, my aim for this championship, I've said it from the start, is to get 5 solid points rounds in, and then you can just concentrate on having fun and trying to get some really big results, because once you've got 5 solid rounds, you know, you're in a very good position to make it to that final top 24 race where the big points are, with the 1,000 points as a bonus and stuff. So everything's going really well. You can see getting that slipstream off of Oscar in the food. Decided to bump draft him down the straight a little bit, giving him some bumps all the way down the straight just to boost him along, and that helps myself out as well, because I can then pick up the slipstream and helps me defend from any cars behind. But not going to make any moves on anyone going into turn 1. I wanted to keep it fairly clean and just let everyone drive through the corners, although the BMW decided to give me a tap into turn 1 there, tried to go on the inside. He just completely ignored the braking zone, and then again on turn 2 tried the same, but luckily I fought back at it and stayed on the outside and made sure that he couldn't pick the slipstream up. I had to keep giving him a little nudge as well, because he wasn't letting me take the normal line into the corner, which was a little bit frustrating, but managed to hold that line and got myself back into the position, and Zocchi managed to jump ahead of that BMW also to put himself right behind me. So everything started okay. I was a little bit frustrated that, you know, some of the dives into that corner, but it was predictable at this track. Everyone was going to be diving into that corner with the slipstream and stuff, so quite expected. As a car in front of me made a mistake and actually hit the wall going into the corner before, and he had no speed on the apex of the corner, so I tried to go on the inside, went past him, and I think Zocchi also got past him. Did he? Maybe not. I think Zocchi's just behind him at the point, but he looks like he's struggling a lot straight away from the start. Whether he's hooked up a really good qualifying lap with a slipstream, because he seemed a little bit out of place. He seemed to be getting totally destroyed down there by everyone pretty much going past him, and struggling straight away from the start, even though he's in that Nissan. So myself managing to get straight onto Oscar Indy Foods slipstream, and again I'm going to bump draft him. One mistake I did make at this point was I think I put it into a lower mixture and tried to bump draft him in mixture 3. Obviously I wasn't 100% sure how strong it would be with these settings on. I think I should have just went into mixture 1 and give him a really big shunt to push him closer to P2, M. Thomas in the Ferrari, but obviously the Mercedes isn't the strongest car down the straight, so the effect of my bump drafting isn't as strong as the other way round if like the BMW bump drafts me. You can see they're picking up the slipstream, and decided to go into mixture 2 and try it in mixture 2. It did work a little bit better, but I think one mixture was the way to do it, so I decided to back out of that. Now I'm not going to give him another bump before the corner, because that's one thing I wouldn't want if I was getting it done to me, is a bump just before the braking zone, because you don't want to be carrying more speed than what you're prepared to going into the corner. You want to have that all worked out before you're approaching the corner. As going through the corners there, a few little taps on the wall by both myself and Oscar in the food, so lost a bit of time again to M. Thomas, which was a little bit frustrating. We needed to keep this tidy because he's already got out of the slipstream from P3, and this is so frustrating because what M. Thomas was doing was just pretty much sitting behind the Toyota during the corners, because the corners that Toyota was so fast through this section of the track, and then down the straights M. Thomas was then just obviously saving fuel during the whole lap, but then on the straights just bump drafting him down the straight and pushing him forward. So very clever driving by M. Thomas there in the Ferrari, as I'm just trying to hold on to that BMW, sitting in the slipstream, doing a lot of short shifting. That's how I decided to do this, just short shift the gears a lot. If I would have had stronger slipstream throughout the whole race, I would have probably done a lot more fuel mixture slipstreaming, but at this stage I'm a little bit behind there in the infield, so leaving it in one mixture and just trying to get on the brakes at the exact point so I can catch right back up to his slipstream. And again, gonna have to do something similar down this straight. I decided that it was probably better if I try and get in front and then push through the handling section and try and let him bump draft me down the straight, because I felt like that way might work a little bit better. So you're gonna see now I decided to go for the overtake. He put his hazards on there, so I kind of took that as do it the other way round, and whether he meant that or not I'm not too sure, but I felt like that was a better option because his car's faster down the straights. So this was the way I thought this would be the best chance to get into the slipstream. So now he must have took it that way because he decides to bump draft me, which you instantly see his car's so much quicker getting up to my the rear gearbox than I was, and then going into the corner he bump drafted me there a little bit close to the braking, but that's not too bad. Brake on 100 because I'm carrying a little bit more speed than normal, but then Oscar in the food gives me a tap on the rear. He misses his braking, but luckily I managed to just hold on to the car. It was so close to losing control, and I managed to hold it on all the way through the corner. Nearly got into M Thomas's slipstream again. Unfortunately missed out on it by just a fraction, but you can see now Oscar in the field behind me again through the handling section, and you can see just a little bit too far behind that Ferrari slipstream. It's so frustrating because we were within just a few tenths from picking that up there through bump drafting, and luckily I was surprised that I managed to hold on to the car with that tap going into the turn 1, because I was on the brakes and turning and then having to put the power down just to try and stop the front end from understeering to try and get some oversteer on the exit. It was really difficult to keep the car on the track, but it was a bit frustrating because I think without that bump into that corner and hooking that corner up perfectly all the way through it, I might have just been able to pick up the slipstream from M Thomas. But obviously the speed that Oscar in the food might have caught him out of it then, and then going into this braking zone, you're going to see from quite far back Oscar again misses his braking zone and goes into corner a little bit too far. Luckily I looked in the mirror and saw it happening, so I went to turn in and saw in the mirror that he was coming through. The advantage of using the view I use, obviously seen him there, left the door open, because if I shut it we'd probably both get penalties. And again he put his hazards on to thank me because he obviously saw that I was aware that he was diving through, gave him the space. And then again we're going to go through the same thing again, where he's going to try and bump draft me all the way down the straight and see if he can get me a bit closer to M Thomas again. So you can see we're quite far back, not really near the slipstream, and now we need to boost myself up. You can see carrying the speed on the uphill section, that's 5 miles per hour faster than I normally would be going. Now up to 174, normally I'm only hitting 170 by the end of the straight. And then again going into the braking zone, let's see if he can brake a little bit earlier. And again he gives me another tap going into turn 1, which pushes me wide again. And again I just about hold on to the car but lose a little bit of time. So again a little bit frustrating. He missed his braking zone again. He gives me the flash to say sorry again. So that's twice now, 2 laps in a row, and obviously the missed braking into the final corner where I had to get out of his way to avoid getting hit. And you can see how close it is now. You can see Zocchi behind Oscar in the food, putting him under pressure, and another BMW just following in the battle there. And this is really close. Obviously it's frustrating because every time of that in the straight we're just a couple attempts away from M Thomas. If my car was that little bit faster down the straights, we might have been able to do it, because the problem was if I go behind the BMW and do it, my car's not fast enough at getting back into the back onto the gearbox to give him another bump draft down the straight. So this was the most effective way of doing it, letting myself drive through this section and then trying to let him bump draft me down the straight. But it was quite frustrating because we're just always that few attempts away. But I'm not too worried at this stage. I'm in P3 at this stage. Obviously the way it's going though is I'm not really getting the opportunity to save as much fuel as a lot of the other drivers in the race, because they're behind me through the majority of the track, and even on the straights they're behind me, so they're probably saving a lot more fuel than me. But I just decided I'll just short shift it in one mixture, try and keep the speed reasonably okay to see if we can just stay in touch with M Thomas at least. It's pretty obvious what M Thomas was doing was just using the slipstream of P1 to enable him just to save as much fuel as possible, and then just sitting behind him during the handling section, because the Ferrari could keep up with the Toyota on the corner. So it kind of worked out best for M Thomas to do that tactic and just bump draft him down the straight, because it then helps the Toyota with its lack of straight line speed also. As again the BMW gives me a massive bump going into this corner, as Zocchi manages to get past, and I managed to brake this time with no issue. And you can see without the issue, look how close we got to that slipstream. We actually got within a second, but then coming out the corner with 1.1 seconds behind, I was so close again to picking that slipstream up. And that shows you, without that extra bump that he gave me on lap 2 and 3, I think I would have been so close to picking up the slipstream. It was really frustrating, because that really did show. We've been able to do it cleanly. I came within inches of getting that slipstream and starting to home back into the battle for P1, which then would have enabled me to start saving fuel also, because at this stage I just can't afford to do it. Because look, as soon as we're out of slipstream, I have to do my fuel saving, because otherwise I'm going to mess my race up. If I start using all my fuel up, I can't get all 6 laps in if I start driving aggressive. So I've got to just keep the short shifting going to make sure that I can get 6 laps in terms of the fuel. So that's why I'm doing this way, and it does lose me a few tenths, but you can see just 1.5 seconds behind M Thomas again. Managed to catch up a bit on the final sector as I hooked it up reasonably well with still doing short shifting again. a little bit of a bump draft just before that corner. I would have preferred not getting that really there, because I kind of took a little bit too much speed into the corner. It nearly caught me out, but he was trying to help me out, so can't really complain. As Zocchi manages to get past Oscar in the food. Now, one thing I knew was that Zocchi was probably just going to not bump draft and try and get straight back onto the slipstream of M. Thomas. He's obviously been sitting behind for a while now, and has obviously been able to save fuel, as P1 actually goes into the pits with just 14% fuel. So this is my point. You know, if you're driving without a slipstream, you have to be saving fuel. You're not going to be able to get it round 6 laps. As I took the car straight into Zocchi's slipstream and picking that up straight away, you can see getting quite a big slipstream from that Dodge. Look how much faster that car is down the straight, and that gives me a big slipstream. But as soon as I pull out the slipstream down to 173, 172 as we come into the braking zone, just stays at 173, and managed to get that position back by staying on the inside. I was tempted to let Zocchi go there, but through the handling section, I'm not too sure if the Dodge was as fast as the Mercedes if I hooked it up. I think the Mercedes was probably a little bit better on the handling section. As we ride on board now with Zocchi, as following myself, going through the handling section, the fast corners, although the Mercedes isn't brilliant through corners like this. I mean, you can see the difference on acceleration. The Dodge is so much faster, but going through corners like this, I felt like the Mercedes was a lot more planted and able to push reasonably hard. So I tried to drive as aggressively as possible while I had Zocchi behind me, and tried to really hook it up to see if I could get as close as I could to M. Thomas. You'll see the body language on the car, the way I'm really using all the track and really swinging it into the corners as I'm trying to drive aggressive and see if I can get as close to M. Thomas as possible. But this is the final lap before the pits, so trying to build up some sort of gap to some of the other drivers, but obviously they're just sitting in the slipstream. As Zocchi behind runs into the wall there, where he runs a little bit wide, and now going into the final corner, you're going to see, I think one of the drivers completely misses braking and whacks Zocchi from behind, and that came so close to hitting me. So a mistake by the other BMW that then goes up the inside. And one thing I didn't like that, because he made a big error on the braking and then just carried on with the overtake. I think he really should have backed out of that and let Zocchi take that position back, but I'm sure Zocchi didn't mind anyway, because he could just then pick up the slipstream down straight into the pits. So not a massive loss, but maybe something you could do. See M. Thomas in the pits with 22% fuel, because he had been doing all that fuel saving. I go in the pits with pretty much identical to Zocchi, a little bit more than Oscar in the food, and pretty much the same as of other drivers. Obviously some of the back markers a little bit further back with a lot more slipstream have got a lot more, because they've been able to save more just sitting in slipstreams and stuff. But it was a bit frustrating that I didn't have a slipstream, because I think if I had a slipstream, I would have been able to go judging by practice runs, I would have been able to go in the pits between 15 and 20%. So it would have been a little bit closer to M. Thomas, but at least we get out the pits in P2, and you're going to see the Toyota starts to get past us now. He's obviously got to lap all the tyres, and I go straight in to get that slipstream to help me out on the acceleration all the way down into turn 1, and that actually helps me out a bit. You can see just about in it enough to pick up quite a solid slipstream there, and actually started gaining back on the Toyota going into the braking zone, so able to hold off the other drivers behind me. And now I've got a car to actually give me slipstream through the rest of the lap, and this really does show you the difference in speed from when you've got a slipstream, because I noticed straight away going into the corner before the tunnel, I'm normally going about 152, and even with short shifting now, you can see changing up gears early with the slipstream, I end up going about 158 before the lift off phase. Look at that, 157, 158, 159. That's 6 miles per hour more than when I haven't got the slipstream. So it does show you the difference that slipstream does make, and it is a little bit overpowered on GT Sport, but I don't think they're ever going to change that. It does make for entertaining racing, but it's not the most realistic, to be brutally honest. But so far this race, everything's going well. Still in P3. I felt like P2 was on the cards at this stage. I knew that Zocchi was probably going to put some better laps in towards the end, but I knew if the slipstream's so strong on this track that if you're in someone's slipstream, you can be a second slower and stay within touching distance. But you see, going into braking zone, I was thinking about throwing it up there, but I thought no real point in doing that. I might as well just make sure I hook up this corner, get on the power nice and early, and then just try and bump draft P2 down the straight to see if I can break the slipstream from the drivers behind me, because I knew that his car wasn't going to be able to bump draft me. So I'm going to sit behind and give him some bump drafting down the straight. You can see when I do that, you can see though that P4 starts to get a little bit closer. So I don't think his car or my car really had the speed to really get out of anyone's slipstream. So I do that for a bit, but then I see that the BMW is starting to get a massive slipstream from behind me. So I go to the right hand side, and now we're kind of blocking the way a bit. But another car comes from behind, you see, the other BMW, and gives me a bump draft, which I'll take, as it then boosts me up to speed to 173 and puts myself into P2. So at this point everything's looking really good. He has a little look up on the inside, but I thought he's not going to go for that, and luckily he doesn't go for that, as he was too far. But he had his front of his car pretty much side to the rear of my car, maybe touching the rear, as I then go too fast into that corner, hit the wall quite hard. I just got a massive amount of understeer. Normally you pick up a bit of oversteer, which you can then help you drift a bit. I just got understeer and hit that wall and picked up a 5-second penalty. So I was kind of beating myself up a little bit about that. I was a bit annoyed at myself for making that silly error and picking up a 5-second penalty, because that's not what I wanted, you know, in a race as close as this with other cars. One thing I didn't want was a 5-second penalty, and that it kind of I think it started to affect my driving a bit, because I started getting a bit annoyed with myself. But like I was saying, yeah, before that corner he didn't make the move because he only had the front portion of his car at the side of mine. I think he backed out of it because it's a dangerous thing to do when you're going into a fast corner. You know, slow corners you can go for moves like that if you've got your front of your car there, but corners that you're going through in third gear at 100 miles per hour stuff, it's too risky. So that's why he didn't go for that. As we now go down onto the final corner, picking up the slipstream of Zocchi, and I'm just going to sit behind and probably try and maybe bump. I was thinking, do I bump draft Zocchi down this straight now? I felt like his car was probably going to be the best car to do it to, because he's so fast down the straight. If I can boost him, it's then going to boost me as well. As you can see there, that big 5-second penalty as we go down the straight. As I'm looking to bump draft Zocchi, now at this point I didn't know what to do, because I could see he's possibly going to do it to P2, whether he was going to bump draft him. So I decided to back out of that and just wait to see what Zocchi was going to do. So I moved over, saw that he got out of the way, and now I can bump draft him, because I didn't want to cause any sort of collision by hitting two drivers together that weren't prepared for it. So once he was out of the way, I can now bump draft Zocchi, use the speed of that Dodge Viper, and boost myself along. You can see there, going up to 175, and then decided to pull out to the left because I wanted to make sure that Zocchi knew that I wasn't going to try and make a move on him going into this corner. However, the Ferrari decides to lunge it in from miles back and gives me a little tap there on the corner, which I was a little bit frustrated about. And then again on this corner, just tries to do the exact same thing. You can see him in the mirror, he wasn't long enough. I ended up giving a little tap on the right hand side there because I was really frustrated with him there. It was an aggressive move, and I wasn't really happy about that move. But people are going to try this at this track, you know, because you can take that inside line, you can just outbrake someone, push them out the racing line and take that inside line. It's the way the corner is designed. So he took advantage of that and then got himself up in position. So I was frustrated. I did give him some flashes because I felt like it wasn't on, you know, especially going into turn one, because his car was well behind mine. He just decided to throw it up and hope for the best, which annoyed me a bit. But now I haven't got Zocchi's slipstream. You can see he's pretty much broke the slipstream from the Ferrari, nearly. But that Ferrari is obviously a fast car through this section, so he's trying to obviously push. I'm trying to push also to stay in the slipstream. So we come to the end of the lap now, and pushing all the way down to the final corner. And I actually clipped the wall there, and that was so frustrating because it lost me a bit of time. I was starting to pick that slipstream up and I started to lose a bit of time. You see it going down to 7 tenths, 8 tenths, but I managed to get a little bit closer to the corner. But because I started losing that time, I had to be aggressive on the apex to try and pick the slipstream back up. You can see in the slipstream a bit, but now P3 has got Zocchi's slipstream, and obviously the slipstream of the Dodge Viper, he's a little bit closer. It's going to be more effective because the Ferrari is a bit faster than the Mercedes down the straight. And you can see I'm managing to pull away from P5. However, P3 is pulling away from me, even though I'm in his slipstream, because he's picking up that slipstream from the Dodge Viper, and I'm nearly out of the slipstream. You can see this was frustrating because I clipped that wall, not really concentrating 100%. I've now lost the slipstream, which would have been so important to stay with Zocchi all the way to the finishing line. And obviously I did want to make sure I stayed with him because I felt like P3's move was too aggressive anyway, but that's pretty much nothing I can do about that, because the way obviously this corner, you look at it from here, if someone throws it up the inside, there's nowhere that they can go on the right hand side because there's a wall, so you end up just pushing them, the other driver, to the left. And that, I felt like that's kind of why he did it, because he knew that's what was going to happen, and I was a bit frustrated. But at this point I managed to catch the slipstream back up here. Now you see Zocchi broke the slipstream, but I decided to try and get rid of some penalty, and that was a stupid thing to do. That was my mistake. I did get rid of a few attempts of it, but look how much it lost me. It lost me about 4/10, and I lost a slipstream because of that. So stupid driving by me. I should have just kept on it, picked up the slipstream at P3. That was my mistake. One thing that I will learn from doing, to not worry about trying to get rid of a slipstream in a track, a penalty in a track like this. Just get rid of it all at the end. As you can see, I started getting a little bit scruffy with that mistake, and Oscar through actually give me a little tap where I hit the wall there, but not much either of us could do in that situation. That was just the way my car reacted to the wall, and then he had nowhere to go. So now again, going into the final corner, we're on lap 10. Oscar Through is a little bit further back, but he looks like he's close enough to make a move, so I could see that one coming again. Give him the space. There's no point me shutting the door on him. I might as well take a wider line and then get on the power, and then he has a massive moment which completely catches me out. He loses the rear, and I was already on the power at that point, so luckily he then rebounded off another car and caught that, but it wasn't really much I could do about that because he'd put the power on too much and lost the rear end, and I couldn't predict that was going to happen, so I just kept on. Obviously I was on the power already, so that's what happened there. And now again I'm trying to boost him down the straights. Obviously we're going into the final lap, so I don't want another car being able to attack me into turn 1, because I really wanted to get at least the top 5 position, because I obviously just want solid points for these first 5 races. As I then go down the inside, I'm picking up this slipstream still, obviously this boost that I had from Oscar in the food, and I'm actually side by side. I've actually got the position going into the corner, actually in the lead, you can see on the left hand side, but he tries to brake really late, but then doesn't hold a wide line on the corner. We were side by side there. I think he should have given me a bit more space there, but he didn't. But I don't really know. I think if like the other situation with the Ferrari, if you're behind, then yeah, you back out. But I wasn't going to back out when I was actually in the lead going into that corner. You could see on the left hand side, I was actually in P4 going into the corner, but he tried to brake really late and take it around the outside, but then turned in too much and ended up coming into contact with me. But he managed to keep that position. As I then run into the wall, another mistake, really getting scruffy because I was starting to get a bit annoyed with myself. I was making errors, and some of the driving was a bit aggressive, I think, so far in this race, but it's what I expected, so I can't really say much, because this race was always going to be a race like this. It's never going to be anything different, because one, the slipstream, and obviously two, the track layout. It's a slipstreaming track that just encourages dive bombs really, and moves like that, so not much I could do. Going into the final lap, going into the final corner now on the final lap in P6, so not a bad result of this race, but then P5 wipes Oscar in the food out. I stay on the inside, and then he comes into another bit of contact, and that was so lucky. Oscar in the foods, as he slid out after the contact from P4, Oscar in the foods car goes a second before it's going to come into contact with mine, and just about I avoid him. Now coming to the finishing line, we can see that there's so many drivers with penalties, so I decided to just lift off, not brake, and just let the penalty go like that, and you can see it actually worked out quite well for me. I actually then got an accelerator and managed to get myself P4, so another solid result. Could have been better. I think there was a battle possible with P2. I think I could have really had a good battle with Zocchi if that Ferrari wouldn't have made that move. I think I would have been able to stay behind Zocchi. I think Zocchi would have had the overall speed to beat me, but I think with the slipstream I might have been able to battle him, at least put him under pressure to the end, but it wasn't to be. I come away with P4, reasonably happy with that. I can't really complain. Some good points, and you see there I pick up 2,297 points, so just under 2,300 points, which again is some really solid points to put towards my championship so far. So that's 5 races done and 5 solid results. I haven't had a single result under 2,000 points yet, so it's gone really well. I'm leading the manufacturers championship for Mercedes, and I'm in P9 in the EU rankings for all manufacturers. So going really well in the manufacturer series. The nations isn't going so well. Some bad luck, some mistakes on my behalf, but I think it's always the way. You seem to get the luck in one or the other. So far from my perspective anyway, either season's gone each way, but reasonably happy with that. Picked up some more solid points and still in P1 in the manufacturers championship, and looking like I've pretty much got that top 24 race covered for the final one now, because I've picked up 5 really solid results already. So now I've just got to concentrate on trying to improve the lower scoring rounds and get myself up a few extra few hundred points in each one, etc. Anyway, hope you enjoyed that video. It was a fun race, some aggressive driving, some moves that were mistakes by a lot of people. I think a lot of the bumps from behind was a lot of the time was mistakes. Obviously, people missing the braking because they're carrying more speed, and I get that, and I understand that. You just got to be a bit more aware, I think, when you're carrying the extra speed, that you need to brake that little bit earlier. But things like this happen, mistakes happen, and a good result in the end. So hope you enjoyed that video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already subscribed. Make sure you click that notification button so you don't miss any future videos, and give the video a thumbs up if you've enjoyed it. Thanks again, and I'll be back very soon.